Record. And we're live. So hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of Stories from the Path. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. And thank you in particular to my very dear friend, Deb Frischmon, for giving and sharing of herself tonight and also in preparation for this call and interview. I'm super excited about this show format in general, and I couldn't be more excited than I am to talk to my dear friend Deb tonight. In a minute, I'll tell you a little bit more about how I got started on creating this monthly talk show and interview show. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the format for tonight so you have an idea of what's going on. So tonight's going to be a 60-minute interview and conversation, and during that time, it's mostly just going to be Deb and I talking, and you get to sit back and watch and listen and enjoy Deb's amazing stories. At the end, there'll be an opportunity for you to add something to the call by either making a comment or asking a direct question to me or Deb. So save your questions for the end, and if anything comes up along the way, you type it in the chat box. I'll respond as I can. Typically, this program ends right at 8. It's a good 1-hour call. If we do run a little bit over, it'll only be a little bit over, and I absolutely positively wrap it up at 8:10, so we're off the call at 8:15. So you're not in that awkward situation where you're like, oh my God, I've got to do something, but I don't want to log off. So I can assure you, stay with us till the end, and it won't be later than 8 or very shortly after that. If something comes up that we don't get to, both Deb and I are available by Facebook and email in the days ahead. So I can hardly believe that I'm in month 6 of this project now that I dreamed up after some other projects that happened in my life. And over the last half a year, I've had the opportunity to go into in-depth conversations with the likes of Tom DeWolf, who's with us here tonight, Rebecca Sagoda from I Believe in Me, Jeffrey Hutcherson, Hot Chocolate, my dear friend Wendy Doherty, and Mark Offenbacher, who's with us tonight, the Discovering Acceptance and Finding Peace Workshop Guru. And in the process of doing those interviews, I've just learned so much about myself. I've learned so much about some amazing people along the way, and I've deepened friendships, which is really the most important and valuable thing to me. Over the last 2 years in general, I've explored a lot of different paths that I never thought I would have explored in this lifetime, and many of them are direct tributaries from the world of infinite possibilities. At the San Antonio IP conference in January of 2016, I had the privilege of serving on the team, and I had a number of assignments at that conference. And 2 of the assignments that I was most excited about were introducing Regina Garapi for her keynote speech, and then also being Mike Dooley's room ambassador for his breakout session with the returning trainers. And Mike's session at that point was designed to be a Q&A for trainers to pick his brain, but Regina really wanted to make some sense of order of it, so she had some questions submitted in advance, and as his room ambassador, I thought I would just introduce him, hand him a sheet of questions, and he'd be off and running, but really that's not what he expected at all. So minutes before we started that session, I found out that he really wanted more of an interview, so he invited me to sit on the stage with him and conduct very much a Larry King live style 75-minute interview. And after I did that, I thought, wow, I really, really like doing this. This is really cool. So in the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to tell a lot of my own stories in storytelling workshops, competitions, Toastmasters meetings, speaking engagements. But more importantly, I've had the opportunity to listen to the stories of literally hundreds of people in these programs that I've been involved in. And in doing so, I'm reminded that when we share our stories, we remember something really, really important. When we listen to other people's stories, we create a platform where we realize we are all exactly the same people. We all have the same desires. We have different journeys that we go on. We all face challenges. As a result of those challenges, we have awakenings. We reach some level of contentment or mastery, and then the whole process starts all over again as we form new dreams and new desires. In the short, we're really all on our own hero's journey, just like the famous author Joseph Campbell spoke about. The journey for tonight that we're embarking on is the culmination of 2 years of preparation, meeting, and opportunity in my life, and I'm so excited to continue with this program, and I'd like to now officially welcome into the conversation my dear friend and special guest tonight, Deb Frischmon. Welcome, Deb.
Hi.
Hi. So welcome to join us from Minnesota. I'll tell you guys a little bit about Deb for those of you who know a little bit less about her to get things started. Deb Frischmon is a really special voice in a time when our planet and humanity in general is going through dramatic shifts and changes. Deb has the unique ability to connect with people of all ages, with people from all walks of life, with people from all sorts of different belief systems. And the common thread in Deb's ability to connect to other people is that she possesses that really rare combination of confidence and humility. Deb is a light that you can't stop yourself from wanting to fly into. And when you do, the treats that you have in store from flying into her light are absolutely infinite. For a good part of her adult years, Deb worked as a school teacher, sharing her ability to inspire others in the most important of ways. More recently, Deb has taken her gifts into new arenas where she shares her knowledge of things like yoga, tapping, manifestation, and life in general. Deb has led numerous empowerment workshops. She's taught yoga in community jails and elsewhere in the Minnesota area and Minneapolis area. She's recently led her first ever women's retreat. And in the months ahead, Deb will officially be launching her own individual coaching business. She's planning additional women's retreats. And in February of 2017, she'll be part of a team that has created a new full-day program called Love Your Life, which will focus on the 4 keys to dramatic change in your life in one day. And we'll talk more about that later. But enough of listening to just me for now. Let's listen to Deb a little bit as well. So as I welcome you into the Stories from the Path conversation, Deb, I'd like to, for those people who are a little bit less familiar with you and people who will be watching down the road, just kind of tell us a little bit about where you're coming from, the community that you live in Waconia, Minnesota, and what's going on in your life right now.
Wow. Well, first of all, that was a wonderful introduction. I'm like, wow. And the interesting part about this, Jim, is Jim and I didn't even have to talk about this interview because he just knows me so well. So I feel like you might know me a little better than I know myself. That was awesome.
Thank you. I'm glad to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm just like, wow, that sounded really good. So the question is what am I doing? I live in Waconia.
Tell us a little bit about your home life. I know people may not know what Waconia looks like. You know, I know it's a small community. Tell us a little bit about your backyard, if you will. Okay. Well, like you said, I live in Waconia, Minnesota, a small town, and I can't tell you, I can't see my backyard right now. It's pitch black, but it's beautiful. We had a gorgeous sunset as well, Nancy. Yours is a little later than ours, obviously. It's gorgeous. It was a gorgeous day here in Minnesota. Awesome. And I know that family is one of the really important pillars in your life, if you will. And I know that you just recently, literally days ago, returned from a trip where you celebrated your husband Tim's 50th birthday party. Tell us a little bit about that trip that you just returned from. Yeah, Tim turned 50 and he had a dream of going, just the two of us. And we went to Europe and we went to Amsterdam for 4 days and then we went to Barcelona. And yeah, we had a great time. He and I traveled quite a bit. And this time it was nice just to travel the two of us. So good connection trip for sure. So to tell the audience a little bit more of the type of relationship that you have with your husband, Tim, I'd like for you to share with them what you told me the best thing about that trip was when I talked to you when you got home yesterday. Gosh, I think I was just telling you that what I started to say is just the two of us alone connecting, and it's been a while. We moved in a couple year and a half ago, and we've been running ever since, and it's just really nice to hang out with each other for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I love that answer, and I love the fact that that's the most important thing on a trip that travels to amazing destinations like Amsterdam and Barcelona, and the best thing is just being with your partner. That's absolutely fantastic. So a little bit later in the call, we're going to talk more about the rest of your family, your kids, your siblings, and we'll learn about the fact that you're actually a grandma, which some of you might be stunned to find out. But I'm going to leave that out there a little bit longer for them to think about, and we'll pick that up in a minute. So you've been studying and learning about the power of thought and divine possibilities for many years, but it was just over 2 years ago that you and I met at the Infinite Possibilities Train the Trainer conference in Chicago. Tell us a little bit about what led you to that conference, Deb. Well, it's interesting that you asked me that because I was just picking up a few of my journals today. And as you guys, most of you know, I love to journal. And I picked up one of my journals and opened it up today. And it said, I'm sitting here,
on my chair, wondering what my next step is, and I'm stuck. And I opened up my Mike Dooley Note from the Universe and scrolled down and saw that he was doing this training in Chicago. And it was this amazing training to help you learn how to present better and have more confidence and learn more about the universe. And so I was reading that and I was like, okay, this is pretty spectacular timing, since I just was wondering what I was going to do next. I felt stuck, like I needed something else to move forward. And I do what I always do. And I went into a prayer and asked, and little meditation to listen, and closed my eyes and went into a meditation asking God what to do, if this is the right step for me. And there was a sound on my deck, pecking sound, and I opened my eyes because it was really loud, and it was a woodpecker pecking on my deck door. And mind you, in this neighborhood, we have no trees. It's small trees, very new neighborhood, no woodpeckers ever. And so, of course, my sign was the opportunity to knock on the door, answer the door. Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's how it all happened for me.
Message received, as you say. Yes.
Right.
So on that very first night of that first Train the Trainer, you and I met, and I was with my wife, and we also connected with another person in that same group setting, Sarah Lawrence, who's with us on the phone tonight. Tell us about that first experience at IP, that first hour, if you will, in that conference. Well,
when we first met, if you remember, it was a cocktail night, and I found Sarah at the bar, and immediately was like attracted to her because she's so fun, and she's got this wonderful European accent, and I was new, and I knew no one at this conference, and I had never done anything like this in my life, like gone to something out of state by myself, and she started talking to me, so I just like globbed onto her and followed her everywhere she went. And then all of a sudden she disappeared, and she was like social, and I was left standing there by myself. And so I kind of walked to the back of the room and set my stuff down on the tall table in the back of the room. And then you and Christiana walked up and joined me. And then Sarah found me after that. And the four of us were sitting at this table, and the rest is history.
So to speak, yeah. And there's more serendipity to that perchance meeting that we'll tell you about a little bit later in the call, and what it's led to 2 years down the road when we get to it. So in that first experience with Train the Trainer, as you said, it was completely out of your wheelhouse, something that you've never really done before. And in the process, you sort of, you got yourself into some situations where you had to talk a little bit more about your story than you may have talked about with strangers before, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So while we're at this training, Andy Dooley does this whole workshop on how to tell your story and how impactful it is to tell your story, and lets us know at the end of the conference that we're going to get I think it was like 4 minutes to tell our story in a small group. And so the whole time I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? And I have no idea. And then I came up with, as I'm writing my story the night before, I came up with the idea of sharing my story about why I'm a grandma. Because everyone's like, you're a grandma? You do yoga? What's going on? Everybody's just curious about me. And so I decided to tell my story about me getting pregnant when I was 15, having a baby when I was 16. And we got in our circle, and everyone did their stories, and then I came to my turn, and I got up and I started talking about it, and I literally started crying and shaking, and yet telling the whole story. And it was it was just that moment of like, oh my God, I've never really stood up and told my story before. And the group that I was with, it was Jim, Christiana, Sarah, and 3 or 4 others, were so accepting, and so it was just so nurturing, and it was just perfect. And I think that, I mean, I not even think, I know, like that, telling that story that day was a breakthrough for me. And that was actually the last thing we did. Like we told those stories and then I literally like, see you later. And I hopped on a plane and left. But I remember just like telling my story and just having this like weight come off my shoulders and feeling so much more free and not even realizing that I even had this weight or this story or this, because it just was like all stuffed inside. And I think I've just always been like, I'm good. And it was just so, it was so healing to share this story in this group. And then to go back and start teaching infinite possibilities with people and having that, that story to talk about. And then it would be like, I would have people coming up to me and say, oh, I had a baby too, or, oh, I had a miscarriage, or I had this, and so it seemed like I was really, or this happened to me. It just seemed to like my story then opened up doors to other people sharing their stories.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the healing is really it's a two-way street. Both your healing by releasing from, I think that you would even say, just sort of the shame of that, if you will, by putting it out there and letting it be known and allowing others to step into your space, and then that becomes a part of your teaching. So so that sort of inspired you then. So you came out of that and you went home and you taught a few IP workshops, and then you sort of decided to really cast your hat in the ring and you applied to become a trailblazer and present on the Trailblazer panel at the next conference in Orlando in 2015. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, so when we were sitting in our Chicago and there were trailblazers up on the stage speaking, and I found out that they were chosen to speak, and while I was sitting there, I was thinking in my head, like, I'm going to be on that stage. Like, I'm doing this. And so, like, I already started, like, manifesting that the minute I'm sitting in that chair. And when I went home, you know, you go through your ups and downs, and I was going through this high and then a low, and I was like, oh, never mind. I'm not going to do that. And then Sarah was like, oh, I'm applying. I'm going to be a trailblazer. You know, and she would just kind of went bulldozing through. And I'm like, well, competitive person that I am, I'm like, well, I'm doing it too then. So I just started hitting it and I had to teach so many, wasn't it like you had to teach so many?
6 people for 6 hours.
Okay. So I just went right at it, and I got some guinea pigs and asked some friends to come over, you know, and I got a group together and yeah. And then I applied and got chosen to speak, which was such an honor. It was so fun.
So then you returned to the Infinite Possibilities Conference in Orlando in 2015, where you and Sarah and I and my wife and a number of other awesome people, including a few people that are on this call tonight, had a chance to connect it. And you were one of the 5 people selected to tell your story, if you will, about how you became a trailblazer. So there you are for the first time ever on stage in front of a couple hundred people. And tell us a little bit about that sort of stepping into your role as a speaker, teacher, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there was 222 people.
Oh, just roughly 220.
I remember. Yeah, and no, it was fun, and I definitely a learning experience. I felt really good about it, and I felt like the experience went really well. And again, I told my story a little bit on the stage, and I again had people coming up to me in the conference, like, you know, to talk to me about, I also have experienced that, or my daughter, and so it was really cool to see that, again, that story was making such an impact, and it was, my healing was helping other people heal.
Absolutely. And really it's just beginning to expand into wider circles. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in yoga and what role that plays in your life, and how it's affected your teaching, and how the two things fit together with IP and yoga. Well,
yoga was kind of my big breakthrough in life, because for people who know me, I was a teacher for 17 and a half years, and I loved it, and it was super duper perfect, and I loved the kids and had a great experience teaching, and got this nudge to do something else. And it was really a strong nudge. And I learned later in life that it's my spirit guides were nudging me. And not that teaching children was not the right thing for me. It's just that I knew that there was more for me. And it was really scary to quit my teaching job of 17 and a half years that I had worked so hard to get. It was really, it was scary because that was my identity. Like I was Mrs. Frischmon, and my husband was Mrs. Frischmon's husband. And I live in a small town where everybody knows you in the grocery store, and my friends. I mean, I had so many friends who were teachers, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I really, really jumped and built the wings on the way down, because I had no idea what I was going to do. But I just knew I had to do something else. I just up and quit and put in my resignation about January. And once you do that, they already had someone hired for me like a month later, and no turning back. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I ran into a woman who mentioned yoga teacher training to me. And I'm like, yeah, that might be good. I'm into physical stuff, and, I'm into exercise and nutrition. And so I went to the yoga teacher training, and, it was not just exercise. And it was really what cracked me open. Like I was really, resilient then, and really guarded, and not very open. And I didn't know that about myself at the time. But luckily, my teacher, who was a life coach, she really pushed hard for me to open up and to realize like how much I was like protecting my heart. I mean, she used to say to me, she'd always tell me I would have my shoulders forward and up. And she'd be like, oh, calm down, and I was so tense and I was so stressed all the time, and I didn't even know it. And she's just like, okay, and then getting me to breathe. And all of the things that I learned with her just got me started. And then, to go into your next question is how the IP and the yoga, the infinite possibilities in the yoga together are amazing. Like I do a lot of, when I'm teaching yoga, I do a lot of the infinite possibility concepts while they're in a pose. Like, like I don't need to. So yoga was definitely my transition. That was my big opening up, and everything else just kind of happened since then.
You just said something, and it kind of resonated with me. I want to come back to it for a second, and it sort of just came out as you were answering this last question. But I've heard the phrase jump and your net will appear before, but you just said you jumped and you built your wings on the way down. Is that something that you said consciously? Is that a phrase you use regularly, or did that just sort of happen in the moment?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think I have said that before. I did a post on it.
That might be the title of your memoirs when we write those.
I love it. Yeah, thank you. And
it empowers you. It sort of identifies the way you teach, which is that you are not without power here. You're not waiting for a net. You're not trying to find the bridge. You have the wings already. You just have to engage them.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
I love that.
So your path on yoga really allowed you to step back into your role of teacher, but just with a completely more infinite audience, if you will, and an ability to connect really with people's spirits and souls even more. Was that a fair assessment?
Yeah, just a little bit more. But I will say I do, it's interesting thinking about teaching children, because the thing that I do the most is I teach about vibration and raising vibration. And I would, when I'm teaching, whether it's kids or whether it's in yoga or whether it's in a workshop with women, or it's all, all their vibrations are getting raised. And so I was doing that back then too. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like I realize that now, like it's the same job.
Yes. And even though you didn't have the vocabulary yet to define it that way when you were doing it, looking back at it, you see it's all the same. You're helping humanity raise its vibration, period.
Right.
Individually and collectively. I can see from this screen that we're in right now that you're sitting in front of a lovely painting in a lovely home. I've seen videos of your home. I haven't been there yet, but I'm looking forward to visiting next year. There's a little bit of a story of manifestation about how you wound up living where you're living right now. Can you share with us a little bit about, that story so we can transition into talking a little bit about manifestation?
Sure. So, yeah, one of the things that you wrote that I'm this guru in manifesting, and I even have on my business card here, I have it right here. I have a business card, people. I have never given one away, but I have it. And at the bottom, it says Master Manifester, Manifesting Expert. And if anyone who's ever known me would say, she's just manifests. And I have since I was a little kid, all the way through college. If I want something, I just get it. And the question about the house, it's interesting you asked that, because we wanted to move to a property that had a beautiful view in our backyard, and we really wanted a lake view. And we lived in Maconia and for like 15 years in our other house, and we had searched, and we had gone out. We have a big lake in our town, and we had looked, and we had gone after property, and nothing was working out. And we had lots of people looking for us. And it was like a 2-year time. And then we're just like, should we move out of the town, or what should we do? And one day I was like, you know what? I just have this the picture of this house, and it's going to have this lake, and there's going to be like this marsh in the back. And Tim and I were driving around, and we stumbled upon this neighborhood that we didn't even know existed, that's 5 minutes out of our town. And it's a neighborhood, it's called Hidden Bay, so it's hidden. And we went down the street, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? I'm like, I didn't even know this was here. And there's 10 houses in a row, and they're all on this tiny, cute little lake. And we get to the end, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this cul-de-sac would be so cool. And I'm like, I bet no one ever moves. Like, why would you move? And so we went home, and like a week later, someone calls us and says, there's a house for sale, and they tell us the location, and it was in that cul-de-sac on the lake. It's a 2-story with a pool. So I'm like, we don't have kids anymore. That's too much. So we're like, no, that's not going to work for us. And then like a couple weeks later, the Rambler next to it goes up for sale, the one that I wanted. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. So yeah, so here we are, and I looked through my journals today, like I was explaining, and I bet I've written 15 times that I can't wait to live on a property with a view of a lake, and it's so totally manifested.
Tell us a little bit more about your methods for manifestation then, because you talked about visualization, you talked about creating an image in your brain, you talked about journaling. Tell us a little bit about your approach to manifestation as you teach it when you're talking about it in your workshops and in your retreats.
Yeah, there's lots of, it's a big course. And I talk about, like you're saying, like vision boards. I'm a true believer of vision boards. And I like to write my stuff in my journal. Like I always journal on my dream life, and really loosely. And if I look back onto my journals, 2012, my dream life is what I'm doing right now. Okay. And so it's really fun to see. I'm a teacher of manifesting, and I will say that I've learned that there's just a whole nother level, I guess, of manifesting, in the sense of it's more than material things. And yeah, I'm good at manifesting material things. Then I realized, like, well, what about like abundance of like love, abundance of time, abundance of joy? These are the things, like, sure, I could get the house or the car, that's, those trips or whatever. But I realized, like, that's all great, but what if you don't have love, and you don't have peace, and you don't have, joy? it's, so that's where I did this shift of like, I think it was in one of Mike Dooley's courses, Playing the Matrix, where he said, like, yeah, it's all good to have vision boards and to put everything on your vision board and be specific of things you want. But those things you need to be really loose about. And then on the other side is like love, joy, peace. And those are the things that you're like, I'm going to be, like I want those. And that was the shift for me, for sure. And then I would also say the latest shift is absolutely just surrendering to that or something better. And that has just like been explosive for me, to let go and not be so controlling about what it is that I want, because God, universe, divine knows so much more than I do. And so I am really getting good at just being like, yeah, I want to teach more, but I'm going to let it fall the way it's going to fall. And literally, like, the minute I say I want to teach more, I was sitting on the deck with my husband in August, and he's like, oh, so what are you going to do this fall? Like, what do you, what do you have planned? And I'm like, I really want to do some more teaching. Like, I'm really enjoying teaching workshops and not specifically saying like where or how or what. And literally that week I got 2 offers to teach in a really strange space. One was at a dentist's office, and one was with moms who, 80 moms Moms Club or whatever, at a church. And so it was just like, all I can say is like, I couldn't have dreamt those 2 things up. Like, but putting my intention out there of like, I want to teach more, and just letting it go and trusting. That's been huge.
So less specificity as needed, but attachment to the actual end results. Large goals about your higher level intentions, like love, joy, peace, contentment, friendships, all that stuff, and less of the who or the how is really the big breakthrough for you in the last 6 months to a year.
It's huge. Just letting go of the control. And that's a huge thing for me, because I was trying to control everything. And I think that letting go of the control, I mean, that whole, like, you're like, oh, let go, let God. It literally has shifted my whole life. And everything has happened. It's coming at me like at rapid speed of all the things that I would want in life just keep coming and coming and coming. And it's seriously, it was just, let go, let God. Yeah. Surrender.
So as a teacher and as someone who is set her intention, and the most important thing in her life at this chapter is to help other people find their way, what do you say to someone who doesn't have that faith or that belief in the divine, that belief in a God figure? How do you work through that with someone who's struggling with something and wants to believe more and manifest more, but doesn't have that surrender capability right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I have to say I've never worked with anybody who I haven't. And so that's never been an issue. And maybe for me, it's, I'm not going to attract that, because I am such a firm believer of a higher source and a higher power that I don't think I would ever attract that into my life, working with someone like that.
That's an exact representation of living the work and doing the work, and understanding that those people that will align with you and come into your energy space will be the ones that you're designed to help on the path. And that's a beautiful way to look at it. So you've talked a lot about Mike, obviously, because that's our first link together, and Mike Dooley's teaching, and you referenced Andy, and we've talked about Regina. Tell us about some of the other mentors that you've worked with over the last few years, because I know you've worked with people that are psychics and people who have, been other spiritual teachers and leaders. Give us a little backdrop on some of your other inspirations.
Well, okay, so mentors, my biggest mentor, other than Mike Dooley, of course, is Wayne Dyer. And he passed August 30th little over a year ago. And if you don't know Wayne Dyer, you know, he was my absolute favorite spiritual teacher. And he was actually the guy who, Tim and I always have this thing where movie stars, if Brad Pitt came along, I have the go. And if Meg Ryan for Tim, I switched mine from Tom Cruise to Brad Pitt to Wayne Dyer. And Tim's like, who's Wayne Dyer? And I'm like, he's 75 years old, hon. And he's like, but he was my new guy, and I was just in love with him. And so he's definitely my biggest mentor. And then I would say Gabby Bernstein is my newest. I've been working with her on an online course, and she's the one who has taught me a lot about surrendering and teaching. She's a spiritual teacher, and I've learned so much from her. And the whole course on is how to do what she's doing. And she's taught me how to tap. So if you haven't heard about tapping, she's the one that there's a course on teaching me to do that. I had a really powerful experience with tapping when I was on my yoga teacher training, where I had an issue, and it literally went away like that. So I knew tapping was powerful. And so Gabby taught me that. And I would say I have a mentor in Minneapolis area. His name is Wes Hamilton, and he's a numerologist, a master numerologist. Mm-hmm. And he taught me how to do numerology, and he works with Merlin the Wizard. Mm-hmm. And he was my spiritual mentor for a year. And we worked on meditation and bringing in the light and working with my light body with this meditation. And he was a great mentor for me.
One might say your channel is open to many possibilities then.
Yes, definitely.
Do you believe in angels?
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about how angels factor into your life and your energy space and your teaching and your belief systems.
Well, I was really amazed when I first heard about how angels work with you. Like, I knew that I believed in angels back in the day when I was going to church or whatever. Of course, there's angels. But when I discovered Doreen Virtue, who's an author and speaker and teacher, and when I discovered her, and she talks about angels and how you can work with them and how she sees them and how you just need to call them to you and they will help you. But if you don't, it's free will. They can't help you. And so I was just blown away when I started reading material like this. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, we all have angels. And so ever since she's probably written 20, 30 books. I bet I have 15 of her books. And I'm literally scouring them and passing them to my daughter-in-law as fast as I can. And she's calling her angels and I'm calling mine. And so definitely believe in angels. I've realized for myself, it's different for everybody as far as like what people experience, whether you can see them, hear them, or feel them, or just know they're there. And for myself, I know my angels are over here on my right and my guides are on my left. Mm-hmm. And I try not to get hung up on names of them or like I'm more letting that go, because that would be me trying to figure everything out, and that's the old me. Mm-hmm. New me is like, there's energy around me and it's lovely, and I know they're helping me, and they whisper in my ear when I work on my posts, and I get lots of messages and guidance from these, I call them my team, and they're just around me. So I don't see them. I see flickers of light sometimes, and I see purple when I meditate. So I know that that's something to do with my angels. I know when they're around. I can feel them, and I see purple. Mm-hmm.
Delightful and beautiful.
Yeah.
So in terms of the energetic angels that are a part of your team, and I love that word team. I have a lot of similar beliefs about, my support team on the other side of the veil. But one of those people, or one of your angels that was both a part of your life on this side of the veil and on the other side, is your brother Dave.
Yeah.
Years ago, just this month. Tell us a little bit about how Dave's death shifted your connection to spirit on the other side, and what it's like for you now, and what it's like to have a relationship in your mind and in your energy profile with someone who was a part of your life previously that is now on the other side.
Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, thank you for mentioning. Yeah, it was recently his 10-year anniversary to going to the other side. And I think that I think that Dave's death, he was 40 years old. So anyone who doesn't know my brother died when he was 40. And I was 38, I guess, because we were 2 years apart. And there's 6 kids of together. And he was one of my favorite siblings. And we got into a lot of trouble together and had a lot of fun. And he got into drinking and at a young age, and got into drugs at a young age. And he mixed some drugs and medicine, and he ended up accidentally ODing, and at age 40. And that was really hard on my mom and my siblings and my family, and especially me, because I was just so close with him. And I think that that was my turning point as far as like to the spirit world, because at that point I was like, okay, God, you got to give me some answers here. Like, I'm freaking out. I had learned growing up Catholic that when you sin, you might not go to heaven. And then I just had heard, if like people who have lives like that, like they might not go to heaven, then they're ghosts and they stay on earth. And I just heard all these crazy things. And I was like, God, you need to give me answers. Like, this is not gonna, I'm not gonna let this go. Like, I need to know. And so I said a prayer asking for some guidance on this. And soon after that, like, that's when everything just started opening up for me, as far as like, I kept reading things that I would learn about afterlife. And I ended up doing a medium reading, where I had a medium come to my house, and I was like freaking out about this. Like, I had never experienced anything like this in my entire life. And my husband went to the other room. Like, he went into his office and shut his door, like, oh my God, like, what's going to happen? And so I was sitting at the table, my heart is pumping, and it's coming out of my chest. And she sits down, and I'm just like, what? And she stayed for 3 hours, 7 o'clock until 10 at night. It was supposed to be an hour. And I basically spent the night with my brother, and I was able to get answers that I had asked. And she had asked me to write down 5 questions in my journal about whatever I wanted to know. And she didn't know my questions. And she went through each and every question and answered everyone in order. Like, it was just unbelievable. And one of my questions was, did you do it on purpose? Did you? And he says, no, it was an accident. And it was so cute though, because she didn't know me. This woman did not know me. And she says, my brother was a jokester, and still is, apparently. And she said, so he says that his dumb dog is better than yours. And I go, what? And she goes, I don't know what, she goes, do you do yoga? I said, yeah, I teach yoga. I just started teaching yoga. And she goes, yeah, that's his way of validating that he knows what you're doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. But we were both crying, laughing, because he was being so funny. And she said, I've never had anybody like do this before. And it was just a really cool night. So it was so much fun. That was validation. And then I just had this like opening of like, holy crap, there's more out there in life. Like, I'm talking to my brother who's on the other side. and he's okay, and he's working with God and Jesus. And it was just really that meeting was amazing. And then of course I had to go to, if you know me at all, Jim, you do, I have to go to 2 more to prove it, because I don't ever believe it the first time. I have to have it happen 3 times. And so I went to another one. She said the same thing. And then I went to another one, same. And it was just so validating that I indeed was talking to Dave. And recently I shared with you, I think I have, that I went to this healer, and she's intuitive. And she said, she goes, do you have a brother on the other side? And I go, yeah. And she goes, did you know that he is choosing not to incarnate right now, come back, because he wants to be your guardian angel, and he wants to help you with the work you're doing with humanity. And I was like, whoa, that's so cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that very, very deeply personal part of you, both of you and your brother.
Yeah.
With the transitions that you went through from that experience and the work that you've done since, what do you think happens to us when we leave our bodies, in your own words?
Well, I don't believe that we die, because I don't even like that word, but that's the word. But because your soul is always alive, and your soul, I believe, is coming and going in and out of your body all the time. Your body's just a container for your soul, and it doesn't like to be in your body all the time. It's like jammed into this small space. So like I feel like, especially me, my soul, I feel like I'm always out of my body, and I have to kind of pull back in. At night when you dream, or when you go to sleep at night, I feel like your soul leaves and does all this stuff and comes back. So in my opinion, and what I believe, that when you die, you just go to the other side. There's a veil. It's really thin, and it's just another side, and it's just right here. Like, so the fact that I used to think like heaven is way up above and far away, and I would be like praying so high up, when in fact I just have to think of my mother-in-law who just passed, or my brother, and bam, they're right next to me. Or Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer works with me every day. I just call him in, and he's right here. And so they're here, but they're just not physical. Mm-hmm. And the cool part that I like about it is, like my mother-in-law, for instance, I can just think of her, and I know her, and she's right here. I feel her, and I'm with her more now than before, because I never hardly saw her, like once a month. Now it's like I just think of her, and she's right here, and I can hear her talking in my ear. So I'm like, Tim, this is what your mom said. And he's like, oh, what'd she say? And like, it's so normal in our house that he's just so used to me saying what everyone, he's like, oh, she did? Okay. So.
It can certainly be of great comfort to know that those that have been a part of our lives and left their bodies are still with us. And it's great to have people like you who talk openly about that and allow others to step into that space and know that they can say that without being judged by other people. You've talked a little bit with me about the idea of automatic writing and channeling. We have a lot of friends out there that are able to do specific channeling, if you will, and actually have a platform for which they do it. People like Tracy Farquhar, who's a big part of our community. Tell us a little bit about what channeling is to you. You talked to me about channeling when you're teaching yoga, or channeling when you're talking about a meditation. Kind of define for us a little bit about what that is in your life.
So for me, I would say I feel like I am here on this planet at this time to channel and to I think a lot of people do. And what I mean by that is, like, a lot of times when I'm teaching, like let's say a workshop, for instance, the people who are on this call who are at my recent retreat, I know when I'm channeling when I get hot and I don't remember what I said. Mm-hmm. And so like I literally don't remember, but I look at their faces and they're going like, wow, what are they, what did she just say? And I'm like, I wish I even knew that. And I I don't remember. So it's usually when I get super duper plugged in, when I have this really high vibration. And when my vibration's uber high and I'm in a really good place, it just seems like that's when it happens the most. When I used to volunteer at this men's halfway home, the sober house in Minneapolis, and it's kind of a long story on how I got there. I won't tell it right now, but I will say that while I was there, I totally felt that I was channeling. The things that were coming out of my mouth and the conversations that were happening in those times, it could have been my brother. I don't know. I don't know where I'm getting. I don't know if it could be just the universe, the knowledge of the universe that I'm pulling from, Akashic records. I don't know where it's coming from, but I just know when it's happening. I get hot and I don't remember. And I will say with the halfway home, I found out later my brother Dave's ex or wife, I guess not ex, but wife, told me that she found out I was doing this halfway home, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that was Dave's dream, to open up a halfway home." And how I ended up at a halfway home in Minneapolis working with men, it's crazy how I ended up there. And the fact that I would go there and leave there on such a high because I had just channeled, and I would drive home. I could hardly drive. I was vibrating so high. So that is my version of channeling. That's how I explain it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Nudge from the other side, obviously, then.
Yeah, it seems. Yeah.
Right to the halfway house. That's pretty cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk for a few minutes as we wrap up here about the new program coming up in 2016. This one-day, all-day wonderful workshop called Love Your Life that's going to launch in February. Tell those of us that are on the call and people who will watch this later a little bit about how that started to come together and what it's going to look like.
So, yeah, the four of us, so Jim, his wife Christiana, and Sarah, the four that met at the Infinite Possibility Conference back in Chicago in 2014, that first night, we decided that we all wanted to do something together, and that we just were like, we're meant to do something together. We don't know what it is, but it's going to be in the future. And then recently we came up with the idea of like, okay, it's time to do something, and let's bring us all together. So we decided to start in Minnesota, in my town, because I don't know, because it was my idea, I guess. And so
Jim, you have tons of people who love you in your hometown.
Oh, yes, I do. I have lots of people who love me. So Jim and Christiana and Sarah are going to fly from California and Chicago on February 10th or whatever. And then on February 11th, we're going to have this all-day workshop. And Jim is going to teach a segment on self-love. And then Christiana is going to teach a segment on forgiveness, which is her specialty. And then Sarah's going to teach on relationships. And I get to teach about manifesting abundance. And it's all new stuff. I'm creating a whole new workshop. So it's going to be amazing. And it's going to be at the Oak Ridge Conference and Hotel in Chaska. It's a lovely, lovely facility. We just, we booked it today. And so, yeah, February 11th, 9:00 until 4:30 in Chaska.
So it's just another example of surrendering to the possibilities, if you will, knowing that there was something that day we met and looked across the table at each other, the Four Musketeers, and that sort of sparkle in the eye, and just really allowing things to develop and going out there and doing the work and preparing and waiting for the opportunity to meet the preparation. So we're both, and I speak for the other two, also really, really excited about what we think has the possibility of being a huge program going forward, where we can share 4 keys to your future success and your abundance without labels in your life. So as we wind down then, the last question I want to ask you is from your heart. What is your greatest wish for humanity, Deb?
Wow, I feel like I'm on Oprah and I get that last question. Should have had this planned. My greatest wish for humanity would be, my thing that I want people to is to love their life. And that's why when I came up with the name of that workshop, Love Your Life, it literally got whispered into my ear as I'm driving down the road. And that's my big thing, is like, love your life. You're here. Let's do it. And if you're not happy, let's do something else. And so I would say I would love people to love their lives and not be complacent and stay where they're not happy, and have more joy and more love and more peace in their lives. There's so many people who don't, and there's so many tools available, and there's so much you can do to get to that place.
And it's all relatively simple when we just put it in our minds, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I am going to unmute everybody so we can give Deb a round of applause.
Thank you.
Yay!
That was fun.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. So the floor is open. Anybody, either by raising their hand and waving at me, or if you're not on a video, just say, I have a question or I'd like to say something. Anybody?
Sure, I'd like to say something.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
I came here to this call totally not expecting anything at all. And Deb, I have to say 100% of what the topics that you touched on, resonated with me. And it's not it's not something that I could like go out and have conversations with, like, everyone, family, friends, everything like that. And it's very validating, because it makes me feel like I'm definitely in the right place, on the right path. So thank you for sharing that.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Nick. And I'm so glad you were able to come on, and after just meeting you that one little time. So thanks for joining.
Anybody else, either on the phone or on video, want to shout out some kudos to Deb or ask a question?
Deb, this is Nancy, and it was really affirming to hear about you talking about your team, because I have a team that's been with me for a long time, but I've actually been communicating with them for a little less than a year, and they won't give me a name. They call themselves the Invisibles. I call them the Invisibles. I see purple. I've not heard anybody else say that, and it was really affirming to have you say that you see purple, because that's what I see too, just kind of a big purple glow in the middle of the visual screen in my eyes. Wonderful. Thank you very much for your talk. I really, really enjoyed it.
Awesome.
You're welcome. I'm glad you could join.
Thanks for sharing, Nancy. Anybody else before I wrap it up? Yeah, Kathy's over here. She's got something to say. Let me unmute you, Kathy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was one of Deb's guinea pigs.
Yes, you were. That's right.
Yeah. And she really, everything is so natural with her. And I've had a long spiritual journey, but being in her presence, I was just awakened. And I just feel really fortunate to have her in my life and to have her in this little community. She's brought a lot of joy here. And I can't wait to join the upcoming retreats and all the things you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, hon. Aww. Thank you.
Thanks for jumping on and saying something, Kathy. Anybody else before we wrap up have something to say? Hot chocolate over here.
Oh, hot chocolate.
I love it when hot chocolate is.
Hey, Debbie.
Where's my hug? Where's my hug?
There it is. There it is. Just
thank
wanted to say, fantastic job tonight. It was really great. I was having some technical difficulties. I apologize for stepping on late, but I love the show. Love seeing you here, and great job as always, guys.
Thank you.
AC. Grateful to you for being a part of this community and for the time that you gave us. Anybody else? All right, Marcy. I'm going to unmute you, Marcy.
I am so excited to meet you, Jim, and your wife, and Sarah. And for all of you coming to Minneapolis, we have our arms wide open. So grateful for Deb. She is this bright light in this community, and the support, the foundational teachings that you have all been a part of. We're over the moon to have you here. So we're excited for that time.
I'm over the moon excited, and you just made me even more excited. I may be over Pluto now.
Thank you, Marcy. And Jim, Marcy is, she's the one who taught the yoga or the retreat with me.
Yeah,
You know that?
we had a yoga connection. Yeah.
Yep.
Great to meet you. Anybody else want to put their words out there before
Can I butt in?
Yeah, butt in.
This is Sarah.
I know.
I have 2% left on my phone, so it's about to cut off, but I wanted to put my 2 cents in. I love you guys. I love you so much. And I learned some stuff about you, Deb, that I didn't know, and I was on the edge of my seat. I really enjoyed the whole conversation, and I appreciate both of you putting time into this.
Thank you, Sarah. Love you.
Love you. Thank you for joining.
Love you.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up for tonight, and I thank you all for coming so much. I put an intention in the universe about 2.5 years ago when I lost someone very special to me, my dear friend Richard, who was my spiritual teacher and sort of the big brother I never had because I'm an only child. And then shortly after that, 6 months later, Deb walked into my life, and she's really become the sibling that I've never had, the sister that I've never had, and I just couldn't be more grateful for her in my life. So going forward, a couple of announcements. We will probably not have a show in December because it's going to be the last day or the day after Christmas. So Stories from the Path will likely return in January. There'll be more information online about that going forward. We have a couple of other programs that we do, one called Possibilities and Manifestations, which is a live story share. So if you've got a story of your own you'd like to share, keep in mind that we'll have something in January. You can follow my wife and I on Facebook, Jim and Christiana Herbert, or either of us, and learn more about that. And then we will be back live in January with Stories from the Path for sure, and some other things. So we're excited to meet those of you in Minnesota when we come up and see y'all in February. And until that, and until next time on the Path, I thank you all for coming, and have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.